And let us begin. Good evening. How you doing, Chris? Um, we will start off with a musical intro. I forgot to do it last time, so let's get that underway. It's a bit of a rocking track. This stream tonight, hopefully, is going to be in the line of sort of motivation, inspiration. Hopefully, a bit of encouragement. Sometimes we could all do with being nudged and pushed along a little bit to have some perseverance, because sometimes it can be overwhelming, all this hard work and for what. So there's a lot of different themes built into this topic, a lot of internal struggles that, however we might like to think of ourselves, we will encounter from time to time. As much as we like to think we got our stuff in order and ducks in a row, those would be the moments in particular that nature gives you that gentle sort of reminder to keep things in check and to make sure you have yourself in solidified enough so that you can persevere. So let us begin, and then we can go into this idea of perseverance to get you through those hardships, because I have a feeling, well, I'm close to already going into the topic right now. I'll say this bit and then I'll start the track. I have a feeling we're on at a point in time, an era where certain woke ideologies are going to hit a roadblock. The wall is undefeatable, and this typically was a personal type of wall people would encounter, but as people are now enmeshing in a unified group identity, they are collectively hitting this wall in a unified blunder. And although it affects those types of characters or people more predominantly, as bystanders or witnesses or as part of a wider society, because we're all on this planet together sort of thing, we might feel as though we are being pulled on. Well, they would probably enjoy trying to pull us like crabs in a bucket, so they would like to try and smash our faces into the wall if they could as well. And maybe sometimes it can actually be a bit convincing, and you start to have that self-doubt. And this is a stream, hopefully tonight, to put that kind of idea, to not let it penetrate and interrupt, to dissuade you from your task, purpose, reason, motivation, provided your heart is true and your soul is, well, I don't want to make it sound too corny, but like you're in good faith and you truly are trying to do what you believe is right, then this shouldn't really be something that affects you. But unfortunately, it try as they might, it might have it might give you moments of doubt or whatever. So let's get started with a track, something to get our butts into gear. Oh, it's been a while. What am I doing? Share screen, that's the one. Right, audio library. What is it called? All right, I'm gonna put myself on mute. What? It says the track is unavailable. What do you mean the track is unavailable? Try again. Perseverance. The power. Oh my goodness. The metal. Yeah, right. Let's get it on. So where were we? Good evening, Iridium Kush, JR, pooping while standing. Good to see you. Good to see you. So this was inspired recently. I was having a bit of trauma. No, not trauma. As some of you may be aware, I was having trouble with my vehicle, my transportation, and it rendered the car inoperable, and it was very frustrating. Now, it's not the first time I've had problems, and it's not the first sort of time having to sort of overcome challenges and racking your brain and getting frustrated and the rage kind of taking hold of you. But it's been a while since that's happened to me. So when it came about, it kind of reminded me, oh yeah, sort of things in life do kind of kick you in the balls from time to time. Was I being complacent? Was I being neglectful? As irritating as it might have been, it was quite, for myself, I found it quite a welcoming situation. I mean, my kid is traumatized. She doesn't understand why we're not allowed to drive. I say, it's against the law technically right now. We're not allowed to until the car is fixed. But she wants to go for a drive. So unfortunately, she's kind of suffering. But it's not too bad, there's other things that we can, use public transport or whatever. It's like, welcome to the real world, darling. We have to make allowances and adapt. And don't worry, Dad's gonna, I will get it sorted out. And hey, why don't you try and learn some things at the same time? So it's been a good educational experience for her as well, and an opportunity to bring up different themes of being resourcefulness, being to like instill exploration of ideas, to problem solve, to be use your initiative, to try not to make matters worse, to be pragmatic, to be logical, to track and trace what's going on a little bit, So how much of that? Well, it's just, and it shows also that sometimes Dad doesn't actually know what's wrong, and I need some time to figure things out. So you put some bit of delayed gratification, you put in some work, you put in some time and effort, and you resolve these issues. Now, I do have a mechanical background. I went to college for mechanics, but in those days, it wasn't all computerized gizmos. It was hard, like change your brakes, change coolant fluids, bleed the clutch, change fan belts. It's all mechanical. So with this modern car, it's all computerized. So essentially, the EPS, the power steering module, is electric. It's electric power steering model, power steering module. See, I was more used to the hydraulic version. So for ages, I was looking around like, where is the reservoir for the power steering fluid? Until I was like, oh, they made these things electric now. So it basically is you've got a little module box, a little circuit board. It's actually a double stack circuit board hidden away underneath the dashboard. And when that miniature brain goes kaputs, your steering goes kaputs. And this is right at the time when the vehicle is meant to be serviced for its MOT. So this is why I'm technically not allowed. I haven't got an MOT for the vehicle, so I'm technically not allowed to drive it until it's fixed. And the test for the MOT is not until March 7th, 8th. So even though I might have things sorted out, I'm not going to be able to have that test until then, which is a bit of a aggravation, but c'est la vie. There's no point crying over spilt milk. It is what it is. So not to dwell on the negatives, I'm taking it as an opportunity to, well, as like it or not, I had to sort of, find out what the hell is this unit, what are the troubleshooting common scenarios that people are finding. I'm hearing about stories of people changing their alternators out, and I'm like, oh, what the hell? I mean, I can pretty much change a distributor in my old car without the need of a timing light when you have to do the timing. I can pretty much get it spot on without the need of a timing light. So I know I've got the skill set. That wasn't really the issue. But when I'm looking at a labyrinth or a tangled web of cables, and I'm just like, oh man, I'm trying to. The most challenging part was that these cables have hardly any slack. They're rigid without much flexibility. They're all strapped in, neatly cable tied. So everything is tight and there's just no wiggle room whatsoever. And I'm hesitant to start unplugging wires because I'm worried about where they're going to be. Am I plugging it back in the right place? Am I going to set the airbag off? So fears, trepidation, hesitation, anxiety, overwhelming. And people are like, just send it to the garage, let them fix it. And the garage, their attitude, they're more mechanically minded as well. So they're just like, we'll just replace the module. We can help you with that if you want, but we're not going to mess around with actually trying to do any electronics. And I'd gone so far as to actually get a bit of information. So what I've gathered is generally the fault is inside that box in my vehicle, my model, are 3 main relays, and usually it's the relays inside that get burnt out. So if you can get access to those, you could theoretically change the relays out. But purchasing the relays is pretty much the same price as buying a salvaged donor unit. So that was what I ended up doing. Luckily, I managed to find one with a close enough model number, so swap out identical as close as you can be for identical. Because apparently another thing is that if you end up getting one that's a bit too different, you end up having to reprogram the whole ECU and the car. It's like, I'm describing it as a organ transplant. It's almost like you have to be on meds to not reject the donor kidney. So some of you may have saw on my community post, I ended up buying a salvaged unit, and I didn't want to rip out the old one until I knew that this replacement was actually working. So luckily I managed to, even trying to unplug the cables from the unit were wrestling. It's like, come on, give me that cable. But with a bit of persuasion, they came out, went into the donor, and I had it suspended with cable ties. And the well, it's not an engine check warning light, it's a system check light warning thing, and it's an image of your steering wheel that disappeared. So I had faith and confidence that this donor kidney would do the trick. How many miles is on this salvaged unit? I don't know. Will the same issue happen again in the future? Maybe. I'm already sort of planning for that, like a contingency plan if that should happen. So the idea, what my strategy is once I swap the units out and I get the original in my workshop, I'm going to open it up. I'm going to try and get access to these relays, see if it is indeed the relays that burn out in my original one. And if that's the case, hopefully it's not all 3 of them, maybe it's just one of them. Put up the defect, either try and get a spare relay to replace it with, or leave it on the side until the donor goes kaputs on me. And if that event happens, pull the dead donor out, salvage any relays that work from that and put it back into the original and sort of make a hybrid amalgamation of the two to put back in. So this is what would you call that? Preventive measures for the future, just in case it should happen again. So now this might be a bit of a boring story when it comes to like trying to inspire and motivate, but it gives me a framework to work around anyway. Like for some people, it might sound, a bit trivial. It's like, isn't it just a case? And at the end of the day, it's actually kind of trivial, really. But when you are not familiar, and this isn't really the area, or I don't want to say expertise, but of your, you're out of your comfort zone, then it's kind of funny, even down to like, I'm not used to really pulling off the interior trim panels because I'm working in engine bays or like on the brakes and the wheels. The wheel are like, so things interior wise, pulling off trim was always a little bit of a mystery to me for a long time. I was like, how do people run cabling to the back of the vehicle underneath the door sill? Well, now I know. And I'm being gentle. I don't want to hurt the baby until it's like, come on, and then with a little bit of frustration, it gives way. And that's an example of the power of determination in a way where you could be soft-handed as much as you want to be soft-handed as you like, because you don't want to break, not just you don't want to break clips or panels and things like that. You don't know how much force to exert, and especially if they've never been removed before, they're on there pretty tight. So you do need to be a bit heavy-handed or be definite in your motions. There's no pussyfooting around with these sort of things. It's like, if this is coming off, it's gonna have to come off, and it's heave-ho. And once you make that kind of what's the right word, that vow, it's almost like a wedding, but like you're making a conviction is the word I'm looking for. Once you are convicted and you've decided this is going to come off, you remove yourself as being the obstacle in the equation, and it's going to come off, and so is the next piece. There is not really going to be anything that it has to. What other choice is there? So one way or another, it's going to be done. And with that kind of, it's almost like a philosophy in itself, with that kind of principle in action, it almost sounds juvenile to say like nothing will get in your way, but it is that kind of attitude of like, no, nothing is going to get in, like this is going to come off. I don't care. Even if I have to get a hacksaw and be brutal about it. So slowly I'm working my way, getting more and more access to this module underneath the dashboard, discovering how the car is pieced together and the mindset of the engineers that went behind it. And, admiring some of like the ingenuity, like, hey, that's a pretty clever idea. I like how they've done this and that. And some areas you're looking at it like, what the hell were they thinking doing this here? This is inaccessible. And as I was looking at, so there's 3 mounting points. There's a like lower, one to the side, and one at the top. Bolts, nuts and bolts, holding this unit in place. And it's located sort of behind the fuse box, off to one side. It is jammed in there. There is no wiggle room at all. So the lower bolt wasn't too bad. The one on the side, now you're venturing behind the fuse box more, was tricky, and that's a nut on a stud. And I've already got a basic sort of tool set, and you're rattling your brain like, how am I supposed to, which angle of sometimes I use the phrase of angle of attack, which angle of attack should I approach this situation with? Should I use my ratchet? Should I use my wrenches? Is this the right passageway to insert the tools. And do I need to buy new tools? So I was looking at that as a possibility, and I'm not too, I'm bringing all sorts of tools. Like, I might need this, I might need that. So all these tools in the footwell of the car. um, to the point where it was getting a little bit silly, where the nut on the side bracket, the nut is on a pretty long stud. So if you try and use a socket wrench, it's not going to reach, because of that stud being quite long. It prevents the socket mating with the nut. So I had to drill it out to sort of turn it into a deep socket to accommodate the stud, and that worked. But it was a bit of a sort of like, look, man, what am I doing? I'm having to modify my tools for the job. This is a little bit silly. But it did the trick. So I was encountering obstacle after obstacle, hurdle, and at each one of these, I'm getting that little voice in my head that's saying like, just send it to the garage. By the time, like, the amount of hours and effort I'm putting in, the garage could do it. But then the other sort of side of me was saying like, but no, I want to know how it's done. I want to achieve this. I want to be able to do it myself, and F the garage. They're great people, but I was like, I don't see why I should pay for something that I know I could, like, I am not going to be defeated by a bolt. Bite the bullet sort of thing. And so as I'm making slow but steady progress, even more I'm like adamant that no, I'm not going to give up now. I've invested too much, and it's like I don't know how I could live with myself. I'll be too ashamed. So this idea of perseverance was keeping me going, even though, like, bear in mind, I've also got, this is the thing, I've got a bad left shoulder, so every so often that would be kind of uncomfortable, depending, like, in position. But with task at hand, it kind of overrided any discomfort in my shoulder. I was like, I don't, I just like readjust myself to make myself more comfortable and carry on. I ain't gonna sort of bitch and moan and boo-hoo. There was no in a situation like that, there is no room for complaining or moaning or trying to blame things or people or anything. It's like, underneath the dashboard was my own little private world. The outside world was completely shut off. I was one with the car, and I was forming a relationship. I was like, the car is speaking to me in a way, telling me how it wants to be treated, and I just needed to work out the language that the car was communicating with and work with the car instead of against it. So it ended up becoming quite a spiritual moment. and a surprising one is to still catch me in a way, like, off guard, but to catch me in because like I said, like, I've been through situations similar of problem solving and trying to be one with the technology or whatever to work together and strive for a harmony and use some ingenuity to get around tricky situations. And maybe with that past experience was one of the reasons why I was like, oh, me and you, dear car, we're just going through a tough spell at the moment. We're going to work through this together, and we just need some more time together. It didn't matter, like, my legs are dangling out of, the car door is open, my legs are dangling outside as I'm underneath the dash. It didn't matter that my legs were being rained on, or if I felt cold. It was, the job needed to be done. And I tried some shortcut measures. I thought maybe I don't need to rip out everything. Maybe it's just a bad connection. So I got hold of some electric contact cleaner, cleaned out the plugs and the connecting points. That didn't work. So as much as I was trying to, and as I'm looking at how the car is how the components are organized and mounted and structured within its underbelly, not underbelly as such, but underneath the dash. And with this idea of like, how do I insert tools with enough room to be able to use them, and which is the correct procedure? The exploration starts to take place, where I ended up taking away the instrument cluster above the steering wheel to try and get access from above, because I saw in other videos of similar makes and models of my vehicle, some people actually go through the top, but not on my vehicle. It's too there's no way. So I'm again bumping into obstacles, and I'm looking at this fuse box thinking maybe the fuse box needs to be sort of swung to give me a bit of clearance. But I'm noticing that the fuse box is mounted on a metal bracket, and this metal bracket is welded to the chassis of the vehicle. So I'm thinking that this can't be. No, you're telling me they want me to pull out the fuse box to access this? But at this point, it was just the one remaining bolt at the very top, which you couldn't see it, and initially you couldn't even reach up there to feel where it was. You just knew it was up there. And there's like the jungle with all these vines, boa constrictors looking at me, hissing at me, and I was trying to avoid it as much as I could to go through the very thing that was giving me the most sort of hesitation was the very thing I needed to confront. It was like, I didn't want to touch this cluster of wires because it just looked chaotic. But it turned out that was the very thing I needed to do, to face my fears. I know I sound melodramatic, but so it's like a lump it, Billy. It has to be done. Start unplugging, start unclipping. And some of these clips were like, how are you meant to unclip that? I was close to like hacking them off with a knife, but I was like, I don't really want to be sliding blades into an area full of wires to hack off the clips for it. So if there is a will, there is a way, and if not, we make one. So I managed to release these whatever clips I needed to move these wire harnesses out the way. And even then, with all that, it was a slither of a window to be able to then be like, I could finally touch the bolt. Now, can I actually get a wrench on there? And will I be able to turn this bolt, make it loose? I can't emphasize enough how little margin there was to do this procedure or operation to remove this dead kidney. So, but the more I was unplugging things, the more I was freeing up slack in the cable, and I can start to push away these vines a little bit. So I took a perspective approach and realized that I could feed in a ratchet with using all the extensions I've got, and reach it from afar by feely, touchy, and almost to sort of have one last little chuckle with me. I'm touching this, and I'm like, and I'm mounting the socket wrench onto it, and I'm like, yes, it's going on. And there's some, like, it feels like it's plastic, and I'm thinking, this can't be a plastic bolt, no way, but it fits the socket wrench. And then some sort of epiphany come by where it's like, there's a cable tie, and the way it's attached, the way it's anchored is with a nut, it's like a cap, like a nut-shaped cap. So it's attached to the bolt. So I was trying to turn the cable tie that was anchoring down a cable. So it's easy enough to pop off just by feel, just get a thumbnail or a fingernail and just pop it off. But it was that little cheeky kind of like, you're so close, but you're not quite there yet. So once that little cable tie came off, it still wanted to have its little fun with me, because the cable was pressed up against the bolt so tight that you almost needed one hand to push the cable aside so that you can get access to the bolt. In the end, you kind of use the socket itself to push the cable out of the way whilst jamming it onto the bolt. And at that point, there was no more excuses the car had for me. You are going to release, you are going to comply and bend to my will at this point. I have done all your trials and tribulations. There's nothing else more you can throw at me. I've removed half the dash interior. What else do you want me to do? So it submitted, and I was like, fine, you may have your prize. And I loosened up the bolt. The EPS became loose, and I was like, huzzah! But trying to now slide it out of its crevice was like, yeah, you're shitting me. Like, at this point, it's like, no, you're coming with me, dead or alive, you're coming with me. There's a bit of brute force at that point. It was like, no, you're definitely coming out now. I've undone every single bolt holding you in place, and you need to come out. It needs to be done. So it came out. Huzzah! And now the fitment of the replacement can proceed. Sliding it back in was a bit of a contortion. You had to have a certain angle and twist while you're pushing it into place, and then to locate it on its mounting holes. But luckily, I think I had a bit of kindness bestowed upon me, and they were like, it wasn't it could have given me more aggravation if it decided it wanted to, but I think it had a bit of mercy on me. I was like, no, you've been through enough. We will allow you to mount this unit in place. So currently where we are today is gradually I'm putting the cables back. I'm deciding whether or not I actually want to clip them onto their anchor points, because some of these cables I'm thinking, you know what, I kind of prefer it just dangling. It's sort of let it be free. And I'm going to check with the garage. I'm pretty sure I don't necessarily have to have feature comforts, as in trims and panels, in place for the MOT, because I want to leave it off for a while and just make sure the donor unit isn't going to die on me. But if the panels need to go back, then they're just basically push fit, so it's not a headache. And then I can start focusing. I still got some time before the actual test, so I can buff out the headlights. I've got some boot struts arriving at some point. They were on a discount, so do some other little odd jobs. And so I've been very car focused recently, and it's been kind of fun. It's been like project time, hobby time, a bit of me time, a bit of doing something that I pride myself like, well, I mean, my car's a piece of junk really, but the fact of having a car, the freedom, the liberation, the do you want to say privilege? I don't know, but like that kind of pleasure is one of my, like, I've always said to my kid, we will always have a car in our family. Like I'd rather sacrifice TVs, microwaves, utensils or whatever around the house than sacrifice our car. So it has a symbolism. It means, I don't know. So it's, well, the ex used to say, "You love that car more than me," and I would make the joke, "Yes, I do, because it's never broken down on me before or given me as much headaches and problems as you do." Ouch. So I know it's just a trivial story, but I'm trying to express the title of the stream, Perseverance and Arrogance. You could use many different other words in its place. I wasn't sure, I was like, perseverance is kind of like determination, motivation, ambition, inspiration. One of the ones I say to my kid, but I don't say it in a nice way, is that my kid is relentless. So perseverance is this kind of relentless, not going to give up, persistent, not going to let it go, and at what point does this diehard attitude become fatalistic? Where does perseverance become arrogance? And this is the broader subject matter we're beginning to sort of go into. But I want to sort of see, I think it's pretty clear it wasn't arrogance that was, maybe my pride was what was keeping me wanting to do this job and not just hand it over to the garage, the garage or whatever. But you could also describe it as like obsessive, but a positive obsession. And there are other kind of ideas and themes you could throw in, like the shame or disappointment, or maybe a bit of kicking yourself down because you failed. I failed. I'm a failure. So I think one of the ways that describes I had it kind of articulated before I came on the stream. Let me see if I remember it. Like a difference. How would you define perseverance compared in the face of arrogance? Like what are the characteristics or the hallmarks of someone who is arrogant? I think with perseverance there comes a lack of having excuses anymore. It comes down to you and yourself, and this isn't to sound like a grandiose type of thing, like only you could fix the problem. Obviously, I could have given it to the garage to fix the problem. And I had help from looking up other people's YouTube videos. But in saying that, there weren't really any videos that would really explain what I needed to know in terms of my particular car anyway. So it was a bit of uncharted territory in a sense, a little bit. But this idea of for the greater good, it's almost like I don't want to say either like sacrificing, but it's this sort of submission to a cause, where you are no longer the focal point of the situation or whatever. Like you are not the center of this ordeal, where I became, like I was saying I was in a relationship with the car. The car was speaking to me with what it needs, how it needs to be treated. And instead of me being like a human, I became one of my other tools in my toolbox. I was just, I was the, not to sound silly or pedantic, but like the greatest tool in the toolbox is just I don't know how to use it. I don't know how to use my mind. And this is why in the end I didn't buy any additional tools, because as I'm looking around what I've got this philosophy, this lesson learned from before, which is everything you need, you already have. You already got what you need. So I'm just looking. So this is a puzzle. I'm looking at like, all right, I already got everything I need. I just need to know how to use it or utilize it properly. I need to know how to put it together. That's the problem. It's not the lack of tools I have. It's the lack of knowledge. And with that, you you step aside from your ego is what I'm trying to get at with this perseverance. You are no longer, as much as you want to be in control and in command and spearheading the campaign or whatever, you step aside and you let the goal, the ambition, take form of its own. You breathe life into this other purpose. You give um, you give way to it. You allow it to breathe and to exist and to live. And so, in that spiritual sense of things, um, I was saying before that this tangled web of cables, these cobras or whatever, boa constrictors, were I thought was my biggest fear, but really my biggest obstacle ended up being the lack of my knowledge, the lack of my. It was an error in the way my mind was looking at the situation. I had to look at it in a way that I wasn't familiar with, or I had to look at it in a way not with my own eyes, if that makes sense. So, and then even more, this is why when underneath the dash, in that claustrophobic world, isolated world where you're alone in your head and bonding with the vehicle, um, time was flying by. Before I knew it, when I popped my head up, I'm like, oh my god, it's like it's darkness. Or when my kid is at school, I had to set an alarm on my phone just in case I overshot pickup time. Um, so yeah, so time was irrelevant. Outside world was irrelevant. And that's what I'm saying. It's like it was quite a spiritual, a friendly, kind, surprising reminder, and joyous, a joyous one, because it's been a while since I've been in a situation like that, where you have to like figure things out. It's kind of exciting as well, discovery. As I'm discovering how to put things together, I'm also doing some self-discovery of the mind. It's like, yes, I see the problem is not so much the car, the problem is myself. Because now that this job is easy. You want me to do it again? I can do it in a couple of hours, probably. Easy when you know how, right? So it's a funny thing, and I'm blowing it out of proportions. I'm making it sound, for a lot of people, this is like, come on, Billy, man, this is like basically changing a battery. It's like, yeah, but the struggle's real, man. I was in tears. But with arrogance, and this is where we can see the difference of arrogance, where it's the person's ego is the forefront. They can't put that aside, and it really does, in the end, ultimately, make whatever campaign, whatever pursuit, whatever ambition or motivation or goal they're trying to achieve, fruitless, or it devalues it in some, in a radical way, because really that wasn't the meaning behind it all. The meaning was for this ego to have its way, to be rampant, or to assert itself or whatever. And so whatever virtue signaling, generally speaking, whatever kind of banner of virtue, or whatever the sort of statement someone is proclaiming through their arrogance, is undermined by their own arrogance. So it's kind of, it has this quality, a vibe of emptiness, hollow words, or superficiality behind this person. They might speak about how we need to unite people, we need to campaign and fight racism or sexism, but deep down in hearts of hearts, you can tell that it's poppy talk. It's a charade, that they don't care really about these issues. They're using them. They're abusing these talking points to facilitate their arrogance, and that was what it was all about all along. And this arrogance is stemming from this out of control ego of theirs. And I suspect we're going to be seeing this play out more and more in the coming months, as people are, as I was saying at the start of the stream, as people are colliding with this metaphorical wall. What's left in their ego defenses, apart from now getting to a point of like arrogance, where it's tied in with the attention seeking, so and acceptance. Kind of funny, AAA. And all of this is substituting the importance and the value of that sense of self. The sense of self is irrelevant. So what I was trying to illustrate as well with my little story, my anecdotal thing with the car, is this, without realizing it at the time, it had to present itself to me that, like, Billy, you've been neglecting some self connection recently. It's been a while since you've touched base with us, so we're gonna kick you in the balls and remind you need to do a bit of coming down to earth sort of thing, and say hi to your inner self, see how your inner self is doing. And then I was like, oh yeah, I realize it needs to be updated. It's in the dark quite a bit, and it needs a bit of exercising, a bit of practice. So here's a problem for you to solve. Right, rattle your brain and get those neuro connections firing again. Otherwise, you might lose them. So it's a great. It was a wonderful. I'm over the hump now. I've got the old unit out, the new one's in. I just need to tidy up the wiring and get my tools out of there. So I'm over the ordeal for the most part. But and with this, so as I was describing my experience, I'm hoping it conveys some authenticity with what I'm saying. It's not like I'm just talking out of my backside and maybe sounding a bit of a weirdo, or like, oh, he's been taking some mushrooms and now he's talking about spirituality with his car and having a relationship. But that's a superficial, surplus way of looking at it. I'm trying to get into a more deeper, more profound, meaningful understanding, which is giving it more merit and validation, more value. And this is why I'm hoping it has this air of authenticity with the words. And I'm not, hopefully I'm not sounding like I'm making things up, because I'm not, whereas someone who is arrogant, who is trying to beat their drum and run their campaign and, all the rest of it, it's like I was saying, it's that they speak with such hollow words. It lacks that conviction and lacks that authenticity. It hasn't got the wherewithal to, or the rigor to be tested time and time again, to be chipped away at, and to have that perseverance. I've been rambling on, so I hope that is making sense. I'm not sure how inspirational that it really all is. How this go? How can people listening take this, take the ball and run with it? Is to believe in yourself, to trust in that which is within you, and not be so distracted by ideas of as long as people praise me or accept me, then good enough. No, it's not good enough, because it doesn't mean the job is done. You know, if it was going to be good enough, that would have been like me tying a little ribbon and bow when that unit is dangling above the accelerator and brake pedal and being like, yeah, job's good. And, you know, that's not good enough. No, that's going to get me killed. And if I got my kid in the car, that's going to get my kid killed as well. So it's not acceptable, as much as I was liking to joke about it. And this is the problem. This is the scenario I see happening in the forthcoming future, where there's going to be even more emphasis on appearance, acceptance, and don't question me, just do as I say, and give me praise and applause. And even if, and this is the problem, because even if you do, okay, if that's what you want, fine, well done. We'll name a day after you that makes you feel better. Is it really? No, it's not going to help the problem, because that wasn't the problem. The problem wasn't, like I was saying with myself, like the problem wasn't the EPS failing. The problem was that I didn't know how to approach the situation, to rectify it, to deal with it. Like, things break down. It's a given. So I can't be angry and blame the cars, like, relays got burnt out. Oh, you're a bad relay. It's like, this is it, what happens, you know. So there's no fault of the car, really, as much as you might want to blame it. It's a fault that it's a fault if I left it unattended to and didn't bother do anything about it. So I have to take some ownership on the situation, and that means the real obstacle or problematic thing is the person in a position where they can actually do something about it. So going back to wider society, if they're complaining about, it's like, instead of trying to change other people or the situation, what are you doing to change yourself? Is generally what I'm trying to get at. So that's about it, really. I'm not sure what else I have to say on the matter. I might come back and do a more of a deeper psychological look at this. I'm sort of shooting from the hips here, just a food for thought kind of stream, because I think it also brings in, like, there's an element of, did I mention discipline, where you know, you have to keep your emotions in check. You have to, and discipline with practice, because you can't just click your fingers and be like, I'm going to be, you know, there are going to be times where your awareness won't allow you, or your lack thereof won't allow you to realize that you are not being as disciplined as you should be, because because society and things have a good way of distracting you, so you don't think it's important or needs your attention, but it truly does. And that's the thing, they need your attention, not the other way around, that you need their attention. So yeah, I might come back to this topic in a more thorough psychological philosophical way, maybe minus the car story, so that it can be much more encapsulated. But what do you think? Anyone? We could quickly go through the comments. I'm sorry, I wasn't really. I was just lost in my own thoughts. What do we have here? Let's see. If you were a woman, you could just claim ignorance and like to get a pass. Men aren't given that luxury. Well, yeah. And she would probably get. Well, would she get a discount? Maybe. But saying that, actually, I do get it. My garage, because I'm quite friendly with them. They usually give me a discount. Hey, Mr. Goat, just thought I would drop in to your live feed and give you a like. Well, thank you very much, Hobo Jack. Just sharing the love. Imagine where the world would be if men weren't perseverant and just gave up when denied a win at the first try. Yeah, and so this is a kind of this would be a point of I'd want to emphasize to my child, like, you because with her autism, I'm noticing this assumption that you're going to get your way first time, and this ends up creating a very narrow-sighted, rigid, demanding, entitlement sort of mindset, where it's like it has to be. And you could almost say that was the same with me. Like I was demanding that this job will succeed. There is no other way. But the question was it because it was something I wanted, or was it something that the car wanted in the end? Like the car wanted to be fixed, So was it really? Was it a demand that the car was putting on me? It's almost like, fix me, daddy. Like, okay, I'll fix you. All right. But I want to fix you. Like I want the car just as much as the car wants me. So it's a kind of reciprocal relationship. And people say, like, they talk about working with nature. Obviously a car is not really derived from nature, but in my ludicrous world, I mean, everything, even mechanical, is derived from nature. If it's from this earth, then it's from nature, is my motto. Unless it's some sort of abomination feminist, but never mind. But this, so perseverance. If people just, I suppose that's a lesson that's tied with that pain is a teacher kind of thing, and unless you go through that pain or are willing to listen to what it's telling you, or how it's trying to instruct you to learn something, or to instruct you in some way, then you're going to remain with a lot of pain. Now, maybe trying to avoid that pain is of itself the reason why someone might try and rectify a situation, not necessarily to have the problem solved. It's just to avoid the pain, in which case there are plenty of distractions that can try and mask it. But so creeping while standing, that's a good comment to be pointing out, and a lesson built into that, where it's like, that's a very inspiring. It's like, if you don't like it, like, what are your options then? Or what are you going to do about it? Like, it comes to a point where after a while you're not going to be able to complain and moan and cry about it, especially when it's been pointed out to you. You're gonna need to do something. You can't have this victimhood mindset. And so, are we touching on the subject, because heavily loaded into narcissism is this entitlement and then victimhood. And so maybe in the back corner of this discussion, the narcissist looms. You know, you can never escape the grasp of the narcissist because it's so ingrained and proliferated throughout the intricacies of life. Unfortunately, it's like it's built into the shadows. So I know how irritating it is sometimes hearing about narcissism, but unfortunately, that's how I look at it, as a sort of a ominous. Well, maybe ominous is giving it too much validity, but I see it as something that's a sort of a danger of sorts that is always lurking, because it's kind of like, I suppose, Star Wars style. It's like the dark side. So if you don't keep your morals, ethics, principles in check, if you don't keep your self-care, your ego in check and all this sort of thing, you remove these good, positive restraints, these boundaries that keep you in place, then you become susceptible to the dark side taking hold of you. The goat did not get into the mushroom patch. Yeah, I never really had mushrooms, so I'm not sure. Magic mushrooms, that is. I don't really know what they're like. I hear they're fun. Beast. Oh, thank you very much. Pseudoscientist. I see all the butter commies pushed all the good people away. A job well done. And that's the thing as well. We'll see. I mean, we're going to see lots of different characteristics and elements and things playing out, overlapping, and being like a cohort of an opera. Could we come up with a new one? Like the Great Re cometh, but it's like the opera of the Great Re. They like to be on stage. It's all theatrical, so this is going to be a grand spectacle to behold. And I think it's going to be. We talk about societal collapse. I'm beginning to wonder. Maybe what we'll see is this ideological collapse, but the rest of us will be relieved. We'll be kind of like, finally, people have gotten tired of it, because hearing the Re is, I think even they become tired of it themselves. It must be so exhausting to try and perpetuate something that they deep down inside know is disingenuous and full of crock. You know what I mean? Imagine trying. This is when they talk about liars, like the difference between someone who tells the truth and a liar. Someone who tells the truth doesn't really need to have a good memory, because they just recall the account. They just say what happened. But a liar has to remember everything, otherwise they get themselves into a pickle. And that must be such an energy consuming or energy draining endeavor. When you couple that with like in terms of narcissism, like their need for fuel and supply, and it's all depleting. Their validation, their attention seeking, their entitlement is all kind of not necessarily backfiring, but it's not outputting to the high level of demands that they require to satisfy their needs. Then they're in a deficit, and they haven't got the energy to really trying to pull the wool over your eyes, especially if they know it's like, oh, this guy isn't believing, like I can't fool this guy. So sometimes you might say that this is like they're cowardly. So once they encounter a bit of resistance, they'll disengage and try and find a more susceptible sucker to fool, to do their manipulation on. But unfortunately, this is becoming more and more problematic for them. And I reckon what will happen, as much as they'll try and still sell you the same spiel, but it's not having the same effect anymore. It's become the violent, an old tune. It's getting drawn out and exhausting. not just for us hearing it, but for them preaching it. Um, they'll quietly withdraw. They'll try and make a little bit. Oh, I've been a victim. Whatever. People are censoring me or whatever, and they'll quietly fade away because they don't want to draw too much attention at this point, um, and disappear underneath the rocks from which they came. So maybe, fingers crossed, we could be at a point where we start seeing the 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 exhaustion of the ideology, the pseudo ideology taking place, where it has no substance behind it, has no legs to stand on. All this time I was gonna wait. Hold on, I was gonna have a picture of. I'm getting sloppy. Last time I didn't have any music, any picture, and this time the same. So on this occasion, better late than never. Hopefully I won't get a thing. Do you know what that's from? That's from Ulysses, the Ulysses 31 kids cartoon. French company made it. Great series. I don't think it did more than one series, but it took Greek mythology and I don't know, good kind of. I mean, it's kind of heavy stuff for a kid to watch. The soundtrack was like, woof, give you nightmares. But yeah, hopefully they won't copyright strike me for that or something. I'm trying to promote the cartoon. Fantastic. That's the kind. This is the kind of cartoon that I grew up with. So if it didn't do me any bad, better than what the kids have today. You please the fifth. Well, they can run and hide, but I see it going differently this time. Yeah. Time will tell, and I don't want to be like, I was right, I told you so. Just my wild harebrained guess. I mean, anything could happen in the next half hour, But in terms of thinking they're gonna correct their way, I mean, I see what I described more likely than having epiphanies and wanting to self-reflect and start talking. That to me is just another con. It's that clarification of the maybe perseverance wouldn't be the word on this occasion, but the arrogance compared with I don't know what would be a good word to use, but genuine or something, where I don't know. I'll save it. Maybe I'll save it for another day. Otherwise, I'm just spitballing, and I'm not going to have a very consolidated good answer. But I think those who are somewhat in tune or aligned or whatever, those who have a sense of self, those who have a soul and a heart, probably already know what I'm trying to get at. Sometimes we don't need words to communicate ideas. Like, you get the gist, and you're like, oh yeah, I don't need to know your past to know that you're someone who has mentally traveled the cosmos in search of answers, sort of thing. And then the fakers will try and sort of emulate it, and it just doesn't have that same resonance or same I think one of the characteristics is that they try and, instead of making it come from your heart or from the being, from the person itself, they try and make it come from a place of imagination, from watching a movie. They feel as though it's a movie and they're just reciting lines from a script, and they think that this is going to work. It's like, it ain't gonna work. People know when they're watching. If you're someone who's sensible, like normal, whatever, sane, when you're watching a movie. But if you're watching a movie and you can't tell the difference of reality anymore at this point, you're bloody delusional. So if someone is trying to spout movie scripts at you, thinking that this is going to pass the grade. They're assuming that you must also be delusionally minded like they are. And it's like, nah, you do you, boo. if that's how you think. But yeah, I'm gonna leave it here. Otherwise, we'll try and keep it contained. So I'll thank everyone for watching, and for your contributions and time and effort, and all good stuff. Oh, speaking of contributions, thank you very much, D-Man. Ross, how you doing? Good to see you here. And obviously, good to see you too, D-Man. Body language. Body language. Yeah, well, sometimes people, I can't remember. I know I mentioned, I said only a few moments ago about body language, but I can't remember what I said exactly. Well, I just have to move on. Sorry. Yeah, virtuous, seemingly love bombing, manipulated. Yeah, it's all there. Self-righteousness and ego-centered and things of that ilk. Blame shifting. Reverse racism, reverse sexism. What do I want? What do I have to say to get what I want? Message, note to self. Try to follow chat box whilst talking so that I can tie things in a bit. Like, I'm sure, like with what you're saying there, Ross, I'm sure that was in reference to something I said, but I'm just like, what did I say for him to say this now? With AI telling is real fake will be tough to impossible. Oh, with AI telling what is real or fake will be tough to impossible. Yeah, that's going to be a tricky one. I mean, AI is pretty. But the thing is, I'm not too. A lot of people don't like the idea of AI. I'm actually not for. I'm generally I'm in support of it. Actually, I don't really think it's going to like turn into some overlord in the sense that some people are like suggesting to that sort of extreme. There is some inherent drawbacks to AI, like, well, it's a conversation for another time, but it kind of inherits the personality of those who are programming it. So I mean, if you've got an AI that you're programming to look at shopping habits, then yeah, it'll be focused on shopping habits, but it's not going to have the programming to cater for, I don't know, child upbringing or something like that. Or if you've got a programmer who's a bit kinky in the head, then don't be surprised if the AI has a bit of a kinky flair to it. And there's also I think one of the biggest AI obstacles is that it hasn't got the ability that humans have, which is to use abstract ideas or hypothesize, to contemplate. I think AI, I mean, maybe give it time and it will do, at least the way it is currently. Because this was the problem. What movie was it? I think, was it the Matrix movie, in the Animatrix short series, where as much as you can mathematically predict or run simulations of patterns of behavior, you can't factor in or guarantee for certain necessarily what a human might do, which is in a way the problem with psychology trying to conduct itself as if it's a science, because it's not. Because like you might have a person who is ticking all these boxes of patterns of behavior, and you're making this prediction. It's like, this person's going to go for the rails completely, and then one day they turn around and they're like, I don't know, they turned a new leaf or something, or they've joined they've had their soul cleansed or whatever, so there is this random unpredictable factor of human beings, which is one of the quirks that kind of make us unique in a way. So it's I don't know, whatever. Well, yes. Thank you, D-Man. Yes, I'm doing reasonably well. Yeah, we went car booting today. Bought a load of crappy kids' toys, but the kid was happy, and it was cheap. Justification of thought process behind manipulation. I would justify how I manipulate you. Yes, this is a good thing. It is good that I am abusing you. You will thank me later. It was actually described by the Dune universe. I was so little when I saw the Dune, as in the movie Dune, with Sting. Yeah, if that's what you're talking about, Dune. Yeah, I haven't seen the remake. I don't even know if it follows the same storyline. Well, yeah, and this is the problem with the 4 types of people as described by Copilla, I think his name is Copilla. 4 types of people. You've got intelligent, you've got the bandits, you've got the the helplessness or the helpless people, and then you've got the stupid people. And the stupid people are the most dangerous type of person, far more dangerous than the bandits, because they're stupid, because they're unpredictable. You don't know what the hell they're going to do. They get some sort of crazy harebrained idea, like away they go with it. So that's the thing. I mean, I don't disagree with you. Like there are plenty of NPCs. There are plenty of people who are just disorientated. They don't know what's going on anymore. That the fantasy is collapsing. They can't even wrap their heads around the idea that they're living in a fantasy. It sounds too absurd to them. And in a way, I mean, a lot of times on these streams we talk about patterns of behaviors or what we could expect, but that's very different than saying this is definitely going to happen. We can be pretty much certain, but there's always that margin that you never quite know. I mean, maybe they might get struck by a car tomorrow and be dead. So all you're predicting of them drinking boxed wine and cats isn't really going to end. It's not going to come to fruition because they're dead. So you don't really for 100% know for certain what might happen. You never know. They might have a mental breakdown, go into hospital, be put on drugs, see the light or something, or maybe become even far worse than you predict. You predicted that they're going to go crazy and I don't know, they're going to become hysterical or something like that, and instead they decide to become something even far more deadly or worse. They become a serial homicidal. Yeah, I don't know, a serial killer or something like that. So we'll close it up. Thank you all for coming. Have a good week ahead of you. Stay safe, stay well, keep strong, keep your integrity, keep your checks, do a bit of revision, a bit of reflection, make sure everything is tickety-boo, and go forth and do, push that rock up the hill. So have a good night. Thank you.